All right, this will be the second part of the video, and now we shall go through section B of this practice paper. Now, in section B, you will realize that there are a variety of questions here over the topics chapter 3, 4, 5, and 6. And in the first question here, you are given 6 different elements, P, Q, R, S, T, and U. And the letters, of course, do not represent the symbols of the elements. Now, the information given here is mainly the electronic configuration of these 6 different elements. And using the letters, answer the questions. So which element has a proton number of 6? In our part A, you are supposed to identify which one will have a proton number of 6. So therefore, you must make this connection that the proton number is the same as the total number of electrons in that particular atom. Okay, because in any atom, the number of protons must be equal to the number of electrons, since all atoms are electrically neutral, or in other words, they do not have any charge. So the number of protons and electrons must balance with each other. So looking through, you realize that there's only one symbol that can have a proton number of 6, which is P, because P is the one that has 6 electrons altogether. Okay, because 2 plus 4 is 6. And then move on to part B now, and you are asked to identify which one has either a stable duplet or an octet configuration. And this means that you are looking at the last shell, or in other words, the valence number of electrons, or valence shell. So valence shell must have either 2 or 8 electrons, but the only one that has 2 electrons will be helium, which is 2, 2. Which is 2. Okay, octet will be the others, such as your neon, argon, so on and so forth. So that means if you look through all of them, P to P, Q, R, S, T, and U, only U, which is 2, 8, 8. Okay, only that will be the correct particular elements here. So for part C, which 2 elements are in the same group of the periodic table? Now, group means that they must have the same number of valence electron. Okay, same number of valence electrons. So giving you some examples, elements that are in group 1, okay, they will all have 1 valence electrons. So sodium, potassium, lithium, all of these elements will have 1 valence electrons, and therefore they will have a total of they are all in group 1. Okay, and elements that are in group 17, such as your chlorine, fluorine, bromine, they all must have 7 valence electrons. And if you look at the information given, you realize that in this particular set of information, we have U, which has 6 valence electrons, and T, which also has 6 valence electrons. This means that Q and T are from the same group. And in part D, okay, in period 2 of the periodic table, means that there are 2 occupied shells. That means you have to look at the numbers that are featured in the electronic configuration. There must be 2 numbers. One example of the element in period 2 will be P, because P is the one that has 2 numbers, okay, 2 and 4, 2 shells that are occupied. Q also has 2 shells, 2 and 6. Okay, on the other hand, R with 3 numbers, this tells you that there are 3 occupied shells. And in fact, S, T, and U as well, they all have 3 numbers in the electronic configuration. This means that they have 3 shells that are occupied. Therefore, our answer for part D will be P and Q. And in the last part for this question, part E, R can form a compound with T. So complete the table about the compound formed between R and T. So if you look at R is 281, which means that it will form a formula, okay, an ion rather, that has a positive 1 charge. So in this case, I will write R plus as the ion that is formed by R. T, on the other hand, has 286, and therefore the formula of your ion will be a negative 2 charge, T2 minus. And since one of R is a metal because it's in group 1, and T is a non-metal since it's in group 16, therefore the kind of bonding that it will form will be an ionic compound or ionic bonding. And then the formula, we've done this a lot of times in class. You bring the numbers down diagonally, you get the formula of R2T. You can also use the hand method that I shared in class. Okay, with that, let's move on to question number 2. And question number 2 will be a question whereby you have to recognize the various kinds of substances given, and then subsequently you will classify them according to what they are. Now there are 4 substances here. There's a small typo error, and okay, so first one, sulfur dioxide. So classify whether it is an element, compound, or a mixture. Okay, this one is definitely a compound. Okay, because you are given you have seen this before. Okay, I hope that you're also able to state the atoms that are within this substance. Now, for sulfur dioxide, the 2 atoms, or rather the 2 elements that are featured will be sulfur as well as oxygen. And let's move on to the next one. For brass, okay, brass is an example of an alloy. Okay, we have looked at brass in chapter 5. So brass is an alloy, which means that it is a mixture. Okay, it is not going to be an element or a compound. And the atoms that are present, okay, again, you have recognized that this is an alloy, and you have to know the kinds of elements that are present. There are 2 of them. Okay, number 1, we have copper, and the second element is zinc. Right, and thirdly, for hydrogen, we have this is of course an element. And the atoms that are featured here will be hydrogen alone. There are no other substance. So remember that for elements, they only can have one kind of atoms. For compounds, there are usually 2 or more substances present. And for mixtures, there are also 2 or more kinds of atoms that are featured. And the difference between compound and mixture is that in a compound, the atoms are in a fixed ratio, and there's a chemical formula. For example, sulfur dioxide is known as SO2. For mixtures, such as brass, there is no fixed ratio, and therefore there is no chemical formula as well. And let's move on to number 3. So number 3, we have 3, you have got 4 things over here, A, B, C, and D. So you have to read the statements, the very brief descriptions, and then decide whether it is an element, compound, mixture, or it can be either an element or a compound. So A is a white solid formed by burning magnesium in oxygen. Now this is a telltale sign that it is made from 2 things and it must be a compound. So A is a compound. So put a tick in the compound column. B, when it is heated, it melts to form a yellow liquid which cannot be broken down into simpler substances. This again is describing an element. So therefore B is none other than an element. For substance C, only some of C will dissolve in an excess of water, and that tells us that it is most likely going to be a mixture, because only some of it can dissolve, the rest of it cannot dissolve. And finally, for substance D, okay, it has a fixed melting and boiling point. It is not clear whether it is an element or a compound, not enough information here, but definitely it is not a mixture. So you can put a tick under either an element or a compound. That will that is the correct answer for substance D. So we will pause here for this first few questions, and for the last part of this video will be shown in the next part.